like there's no really new ideas. They're just either repackaged or reformulated or whatnot. But I think that's a really positive thing because we're always dealing with human beings.
Yeah, when we came in here, we moved in here about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's cozy. When we walked in as a team, we knew this was the place for us.
So right.
So we're about 10 people.
Yeah.
And
Mark,
yeah.
do you want to speak as well? I just want to...
Yeah, for sure. How's that? Can you hear me? You good?
To just move this.
Yeah. Yeah, so you felt a good fit right away, eh?
We felt as soon as we walked in it was a good fit for us at the time. Then we got a little bit bigger, a little bit more cramped.
Yeah.
We still have another room that we're going to make into a game room here to have some fun, play some video games midday, but
Yeah.
we haven't got to that yet. It's just a storage room for all the equipment right now.
Yeah.
Alright, so the mic's all set up. Let's go.
How do I pronounce your last name?
Ciglenecki.
Ciglenecki. I'm going to butcher that.
Yeah, probably. It's alright. You wouldn't be the first.
Yeah, I'm going to butcher that. I'm not good at the intros yet. We'll get those ones figured out at some point in time.
Did you get a chance to see the quote?
No, but I did see it. I did read it. You have a longer one, so
Yeah.
do you know the gist of it, or do you need?
Yeah, absolutely. No. We'll,
All right, Martin, I'm just going to ask you to move in a little bit,
Yeah,
please.
for sure. How's that?
That should be good. Yeah, that's good.
How do we look, Yusuf?
Looks great.
Anyway,
All right.
warm up now. So let's do it again. Take
Yeah.
me through a bit of yourself
Yeah.
that you talked about. You messaged me. You're one of the first people to message me. One of the first to
Yeah.
message me and then make it out.
Is that right?
So let's. I don't know you, Martin. So tell me a bit about yourself.
Yeah.
and
So,
let's-
well, it's funny because I came across your content online, and this is what really happened. I saw what you're doing, and what's happening in the marketplace in Edmonton, Alberta, and I'm like, this is what we need to see. You're taking kind of what's happening with the New York marketing scene. A guy like Gary Vee, right? Again, probably gonna
yeah, we
come up
follow
on him,
come
right?
up,
Yeah. But I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what we need up here. And the thing that frustrates me so often seeing businesses in Canada is that we're not pushing, we're not grinding like they do in the U.S.
Yeah.
So right now, seeing a guy that's local, that's young, that's ambitious, that's kind of out there hustling, working, I'm like, yeah, I gotta talk with that guy. So,
It's interesting you say that, and just to touch on it,
yeah.
there's people that are trying.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we found, and we actually took this from Gary as he tried to explain it, is everyone's trying to take the shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to have an international audience from day one.
Right.
And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We're trying to focus on our sphere first, the Edmonton area, the
Yeah.
Alberta region,
Yeah.
the Western Canadian region, and then it just keeps building out further and further. We're not trying to have an international podcast from day one.
Sure.
We're focusing on our area. And you being in Edmonton saw it, and that's exactly what we were trying to do from
Yeah.
the start, is have people see it and be interested in it and get some value from it.
Yeah.
And if we're doing that, we're winning. If we're not providing value, then we have to keep correcting until we can
Right.
find that.
Right.
So
it doesn't always have to be about that international target, right?
No.
Like there's enough there's enough value that you can add in your backyard before you have
Take it to that level.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we saw it. We saw what Gary was doing. We saw what Grant, those two guys, come up a lot in our conversations here as we
Sure.
assess the digital marketing and online sphere right now. And Gary talked about the podcast and building content.
Yeah.
What
now
we
it's
like,
LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn's huge,
Yeah,
right? It's you get organic from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We liked it because we get so much content out of these podcast episodes.
Yeah.
We'll get 2 or 3 videos, and we can make smaller clips. We can transcribe it. We get new ideas,
Sure.
meet new people, and it's a good way to maximize time.
Yeah.
So we've been having a blast so far.
That's good.
In getting this going and
That's what matters too, right? Having fun,
having some fun.
meeting people,
Yeah.
good conversations. Yeah.
So you came from the East Coast, right?
Yeah, from Hamilton, Ontario.
And then you made it-
Steeltown.
Steeltown. You made it out to Edmonton, Alberta.
Yes, sir. That was like 2015 or so.
Yeah.
End of 2015. Yeah, and kind of just got going, hitting the ground running, as they say. Got a couple offers already within like the first month. A couple big companies, and the one that I ended up deciding to go with was UPS.
Yeah.
United Parcel Service. So, and the idea behind that was just, get hooked up with a company that has the resources, that has the brand, that is able to kind of catapult me into the business realm, right?
So what is it like? I'm going to get into this right away because this one
Yeah.
interests me.
Yeah.
What is it like doing BD for one of those Fortune 50 companies? Because we deal with big companies in our Edmonton sphere,
Yeah.
but the Fortune 50 companies, the ones that have a strong foothold, what's
Yeah.
it like doing BD for them, where everyone knows who they are?
Oh yeah. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So the one positive thing, or there's many positive things, but the first one that comes to mind is you really never have an issue getting through the door. You're not trying to explain
they know who
yourself.
you are.
Yeah, that's right. They
The
know who you
branding's
are.
done.
Branding's done,
Yeah.
and it's a really solid brand. There was actually some research that came out a couple of weeks ago that we saw that it's like in the top 10, I think, trusted brands in the U.S., which is just fantastic,
Yeah.
right? So you don't really have an issue coming in, and at the same time, most companies will have a UPS account already, right? So that, again, we're going in and seeing how can we bring more value. Chances are you're already seeing our driver come by. You're already having that experience.
You're already
Right,
signing
yeah,
for
so-
packages. So
there's nothing, negative or, deceitful about it. Truly, most companies will have a UPS account. So what we'll want to do is see how are we taking care of you? How's the driver? How's our service been, etc. So we can start that conversation really easily. Now, the flip side of that is, it doesn't take much to hate your service provider, right? It doesn't take, very many, deliveries to kind of go wrong to say, well, I never want to see the guy or never want to do business with them again. So it takes that little bit of extra, care and personal touch to get over the stigma that might happen, right? Because you might have a delivery go wrong for your personal delivery, and then that travels into your business relationships.
Makes sense.
Right? So that's where that personal element is so important, right?
So is it your job then to maintain and get, the way I talk about it is touch point cycles, and I think UPS does this well. One of the best things is you
Yeah.
see the trucks driving down the road, you have your account, you get your emails,
Yeah.
you get packages dropped off,
Yeah.
you're signing for it.
Yeah.
You have touch points with UPS all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
You know they're a big company.
Yeah.
So all you have to do to create the inbound or to get to people to talk to you
Mhm.
more is get in the door, create a conversation, and add more value.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Is that essentially then the part of your job that's the easiest, or is it kind of still hard to do compared to the normal? Or are you cold calling it, or is it more you're dealing with existing customers?
Yeah. So, and I'm just going to clarify. Right now, I'm working for the financial branch
Yeah.
of UPS, right? But
Yeah.
with the UPS realm, because I did start out as an account executive in Edmonton. So yeah, it's a lot of account management. The territory that I took over was kind of neglected for a little while. There was some turnover and whatnot. So there were a lot of customers that hadn't seen their local rep for a while. And I could have approached that as a negative
Yeah.
or a positive, and I chose to do it as a positive. Like, let's get in there, let's tackle the problems, the frustrations that have been building up, and let's turn that into a really positive experience. And that's exactly what I did. There were some customers, that were calling anybody that they could, or that they had a number, but that really couldn't help them, and just bubbling up with frustration, and picking up that phone and just saying, "Let me get out there, let's take care of it," right? And sometimes it was challenging, but ultimately, if you can give that positive experience, take care of that person, give them what they're looking for, you can actually make a really bad situation really good and have a customer for life. So that's kind of what my whole approach was to that territory.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So GT,
Mm-hmm.
you get your sound the sound moment because Q's out today. So let's sound the sound. We're today here with Martin
Yeah.
from UPS Financial in Edmonton, Alberta. Martin,
UPS Capital.
UPS Capital.
That's
UPS
right,
Capital.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't even attempt your last name, so we'll get that in there.
That's right. So we'll be
The-
somewhere in there.
Let's get this started. We're on a roll now. We're gonna try something different today. Let's talk about your quote first. It's one of the recurring segments on the show.
Yeah.
Take me through that. Yours was a little longer, so
Yeah.
let's start with that and talk about that in detail. And
Yeah. So basically, it's a quote, and I'm sure your people will be able to put it up somewhere. But
we'll get it on the wall for sure.
Yeah, that's right. But basically, it's from Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it's kind of a little parable more than a quote. But basically, he's talking about how he really enjoys milkshakes or strawberry milkshakes, right? But fish really like worms, right?
Yeah.
So when he goes fishing, he's not going to try to put strawberries and cream on the end of the hook. He's going to put a worm.
Yeah.
Right. So that whole little parable, I think, can be that's a summary of business, right? Find out what it is that people need and like and want, and then provide that. Don't think about what's in it for me. How can I get the most out of the situation? Because that's a really dangerous road to go down.
Yeah.
But if you can do your marketing that way, do your sales that way, and you're creating win-win relationships, you're going to be able to provide a lot of value that way. Yeah.
We always say provide value first. So when we look at that and we see it, there's the way we kind of phrase it is there's product first messaging and there's audience first messaging. Product first usually originates from you as the person selling a product. You're looking at the features of the product, you're trying to sell the product. And in the end, most of the time, selling isn't providing value, it's just selling. In comparison to standing on the audience side of the table, looking at what they're looking for, finding kind of that, there's a trend right now in marketing to do hyper demographics, to hyper target.
Right.
So you go down, drill down to what your audience wants, and put that worm on the hook when you're firing it out.
Right.
But I take it one step further. I feel like when you're putting a worm on a hook, that's an inbound touch point. That's when you're somewhat still asking for a conversion or for a sale. Sometimes you just have to know what they're looking for. You have to be in the right habitat.
For sure.
Provide value and put all those touch points out. When we said in the pre-notes, UPS, when they drive down the road, when you sign for the paper, or sign when the package comes in, that's all touch points with the brand.
Absolutely.
And you're having good quality value that's coming back from it. And you remember the brand. It's top of mind.
That's right. Well,
And-
that was so important for UPS as they started their business, and we're over 100 years old. And one of the first things that UPS did was make sure that their people were presentable.
Yep.
Because they understood that we're an extension of the company that we're providing the service for, right? So we want to make sure that they're in a nice, neat uniform, they're presentable, helpful, etc. Because that's as much of a reflection of the company that we're providing the service for as it is for UPS.
And it's going to continue to be that way. And I think, like I was saying with Subconscious, if UPS can stay top of mind, then it just keeps translating and making the job easier for everyone. That's the brand that they've established, and that's the brand they continue to work on.
Yeah.
So I love that quote. I think that quote speaks to providing value first and looking at from the audience's perspective.
I really feel like there's no true other way. There are other ways, but they're not the right way. If you can, again, and it's not easy. That's not to say that figuring out, what that fish wants is
Think
going
about
to
how
be
many
easy,
people.
right?
Think about how many people try to feed the fish ice cream. Like if they try to go from that
Just
first
because
level.
they like it, right?
Yeah. They think that, and here's a tidbit that we see all the time. We see people trying to make decisions in the boardroom based on the perspective of the people in the boardroom.
Right.
Right? They think that because their nephew likes this one product, every person in that demographic is going to like that product. Or they're making it based on their experiences. And we always say you've got to go out, run the focus groups, go out there and understand your audience.
Right.
Because they're the ones that are buying the product, not you. And you're in a different situation than they are.
And I come at the situation as someone who's a sales professional, right? So, I mean, sales and marketing always kind of hand in hand, right? But from the sales side of things, you know, what we ought to be doing as sales resources is going in to, you know, any meeting and having that kind of scripted list of questions. That way, when you're going in, you're actually kind of digging down with every other question to what is it truly that's important to that person sitting across from me. Not only what's important to them, but what's important to the circle of influence around them, because no one's in a bubble. There's no islands, right? So and that takes skill, you know, and you can be
practice,
selling. Yeah,
it's learned.
Yeah, for sure.
And almost every sales book, whether you're reading Grant Cardone or you're going across the board, every sales book features that in some way.
Yeah.
They just take that and they change it in some way or another, but they say the same thing.
For sure. Yeah. And these books have been around for a while, and I was reflecting on that last night, kind of thinking about what was going to be going on in today's interview. And I reflected on that really things haven't, like, there's no really new ideas. They're just either repackaged or reformulated or whatnot. But I think that's a really positive thing, because we're always dealing with human beings.
And that's not going to change.
Yeah, that's not.
Even with virtual reality and virtual workrooms, you're still dealing with another person.
Absolutely.
That's not something that's going to change. And if it does change, we're a little further away from that than maybe we would expect. So we're still dealing people to people, and we have to find a way to engage that in the way that we're marketing, branding, and then ultimately doing the sales at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there any books that come to mind? You were mentioning, you were reflecting on a bit that you've focused on or you've read that have had an impact on how you sell?
Yeah, there's been so many. I mean, the one that really comes to mind, I've pretty much read all of Grant Cardone's books. It's between the 10X rule, and there's also a book, now I'm totally blanking on it, but
that's okay, it'll come to you.
Yeah.
But 10X, okay, so 10X, we can all hold our hands and do the 10X and get that going. We got Yusuf is the guy in the office that'll have the 10X poster on the wall. So what is it about 10X that responds? Because there's one thing that I like about 10X is it's become, the way that Grant presented it, it's become a cultural phenomenon.
It has, yeah.
It's not attached to Grant anymore. There's more than one person and multiple influencers that'll use that for the hustle and for giving it your all and creating the effect of that hard work. Mm-hmm. So what was it that you took away from 10X specifically?
So I think you said something that really frustrates me with the whole movement, right? Is that it has become that kind of catchy slogan that you can throw around without actually...
It has less impact than it would have when Grant came up with it.
Yeah, and it's been around for a while too, so it's taken a little while for it to kind of become popular vocabulary, but it's easier to, say 10X than to do 10X, right? So one of the things that led to, or was a big portion of my success was, all right, literally 10Xing the number of calls I'm making a day. So if I'm being told I need to do 6, I'm going to do 60. Yeah. And it's just a simple numbers game. One of the first books I read was from Brian Tracy, and it was one of his sales books. But he talks about, well, how many calls would you make in a day if you realize that every time you pick up the phone and make a call, it's worth $20? Now, you're not actually getting paid for the call, but if you land a deal that's X size, you're essentially getting paid.
Which you could look at it that way for almost any sales job. Absolutely. Every time you pick up the call, it has a number value.
Absolutely. So if you can kind of quantify that, actually one of Grant's guys, Steve, he's one of the sales resources in Miami. but he calculated that basically every call that he made was worth about $6,000 or so. So I mean, again,
Yeah.
once you kind of quantify that, you're like, okay, let me make a few more calls, or let me stay a little bit later, right?
It's okay, so but it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it is easier said than done, and people will say 10x and then do nothing different than they did the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I mean, it's become a culture phenomenon. I think that with 10x itself, I'm not going to get too in detail with it because I'll go off on a full tangent, but I like the premise of it. I like where he was going with it. I think it's taken off, and good for it, right? He's capitalizing on that 10x that was generated.
And think about too, I mean, how from a marketing standpoint for his own personal brand, how much that's catapulted him, right? 10x conference and all this jazz, right? Even now we're kind of marketing it, right? Because there's going to be people
earned
that
media.
right?
This is a subconscious touch point for Grant. This is a subconscious for 10x, and it's that earned media that he's created around the cultural phenomenon. So and it's amazing.
And as we were kind of talking before the camera went on, you know, no single person in the marketing or sales sphere has the answer for everything or is 100% correct on everything. But basically, we can look into, what is it actually that they're doing really, really well that separates them from everyone else.
Yeah, and then create and correct.
Yeah, and apply it to what you're doing, right? So, you can't copy it verbatim.
Yeah.
Can't copy it one for one, but, you can take the spirit of it and then just integrate it as you see fit, right? Like, one of the things that, Grant's style is maybe a little bit more abrasive than others. And that kind of got me in some hot water with some customers and whatnot. But, again, it's seeing like, okay, where are you selling? Because it's different selling in northern Alberta than it is selling in New York. Totally different customers, attitudes, whatnot.
You're back to the worm.
That's right.
You're back to finding out what the audience is looking for and going after it. And you're right. I mean, that's one of the things about Grant that I talk about. He sells more often than sometimes he's creating the subconscious touch points. But he also front-loaded the subconscious touch points with 10x.
Mm-hmm.
So it all comes circle, right?
For
He's
sure.
running his touch points just like every other business is out there.
Yeah.
And I respect that. He's created a crazy following because
And is there anything that you maybe don't like or don't resonate with?
There's
with
with Grant specifically, some of his messages are more salesy than we pitch. Because we in a lot of ways feel that value comes first, and then when you're running your touch point cycles, you'll run your inbound and try to create a conversion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of like a 1 out of 10 type item.
Right.
So when you see ads over and over again, sometimes it's tough to kind of take that and extend it forward when you can feel maybe a little bit of fatigue with that. And I contrast against other influencers where they don't do that. They're not selling a product behind the scenes. They're just offering pure value. They can maintain the cycle longer than someone who continuously to fatigue certain messages. So
in the marketing space, with all the kind of change that's happened, and this is a word that's used way too often, but disruption, right? What do you find, with your traditional kind of marketing banners and whatnot? Is that having the return that it once did? Is that just a component of a larger strategy, or? So
we never tell clients to stop traditional marketing like some other people will.
Yeah, okay.
However, we let them kind of feel it out for themselves as they start to see that digital is significantly less expensive to get more touch points. So it's a combination. It's back to your quote, and I like it because it translates through today's conversation. Yeah. Specific audiences look in specific areas to find their advertising and to get value from what they're looking at. And there's still value in certain TV spots. Mm-hmm. There's still value in certain services having billboards. But at the same time, when you compile that and look at the data that we can create online, it's significantly more. We get more data. We know more about conversions, and it's cheaper right now.
Sure.
So internet is disrupting. More people are getting on internet, and it's getting more expensive month after month.
Right. Yeah.
We can look as much as 6 months ago, and how much Facebook touchpoints cost us 6 months ago it's way more expensive now than it was 6 months ago, and that's going to continue to change, and that's because of this disruption that they've created. There's advertising on TikTok, Instagram. Everywhere you look, there's disruption of people purchasing touch points for cheaper and
Right.
trying to buy attention.
Right.
So I think it's going to continue to change. I think companies are going to continually to move online
Yeah.
at a faster rate than ever. But there's still places for those other items,
Sure.
depending where your audience is looking.
Right.
And when we look at the full touch point cycle, if we have a billboard and then we talk about 10x, so if there's a 10x conference billboard, then we talk about it on the show and someone hears it. Then they run an ad for the conference on LinkedIn.
Right.
Then Grant talks about it in a podcast.
Yeah.
It goes all the way around the circle until they run their inbound when they have their conference or events
Got it.
where he's capturing the conversion. So there's still places for it, multiple areas.
Mhm.
More people are just moving online.
And what do you think about, one of the things that he talks a lot about is being kind of omnipresent, like champions dominate. A brand like Coca-Cola wants to be everywhere and is not,
Yeah,
there's no one saying, well, why are they running so many ads? It's like, well, no, because they want to dominate the space.
they don't want to give any breath to some of the competitors that are chasing after them.
Right.
But let's leave Coca-Cola out because Coca-Cola is chasing it everywhere. Well, to be honest, they're not. You don't see them on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere as much. So they're dominating every space, and then they'll get into digital when the time is right or when they feel like they have to dump a bunch of money into it. I think companies go after it too late. Now, I'm going off tangent, but for your question, I do believe that companies need to get as much attention as they can with the resources that they have.
Sure. So you're always doing kind of a cost benefit.
You're doing a
ROI.
cost. Yeah, well, I'm not saying ROI. ROI is a different story because with branding, if we only look at ROI, you may not buy as many subconscious touch points as you're looking for.
Because there's not a direct.
Right? So if there's not a direct conversion from what you're running, then you're only going to be selling. You're not going to be doing much branding.
True.
You're not developing for the future. You're developing only for today. So we don't always look at ROI. We look at how many touch points and how much brand are you building, how much value are you building for your brand, and then translate that out. And I think companies need to look at the resources. If I'm a plumber, or if I'm Coca-Cola, I'm Coca-Cola, let's be everywhere. If I'm a plumber, let's maximize the resources I have to talk to the audience that I need to talk to,
Right.
and develop the brand.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a combination of everything. It's when you put it together. You just want to build as much value for your brand as possible,
Right.
and get out of the short-term sales cycle.
And that is really what you guys are all about as a company, right? Figuring
Correct.
that out, providing that value, seeing what your companies are working with, and then tailoring the message, tailoring the resources to where you're going to get the most.
You nailed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you nailed it. And that's our sphere, and that's what we try to work towards.
That's great.
The biggest thing that I find is I think you were talking about university earlier. You
Yeah.
said you learned some things from it. I think that a lot of people come in to sales with the notion that they have to sell and create that ROI, and they forget about branding until sometimes 5-10 years down the road.
So true. Yeah.
I think more people on the internet now are realizing they have to brand and build value,
Right.
and it's so crowded that if they build that value and stand out, then they can go create the conversions and the sales afterwards
Yeah.
with the right methods.
I think as more and more people are kind of coming online, especially with LinkedIn, you have such a great opportunity to, give people, prospective companies, prospective customers, a taste of what you bring to the table, right? Before even having any real contact with them. But it's that organic connection of sharing, what is it that we do better than everybody else? What do I, as, your business development rep, bring to the table? What's my character? What do I care about?
Yeah.
All these things become really important, and you can kind of become your own CEO and build that own personal brand within whatever ecosystem that you're working in.
It's interesting because LinkedIn has become significantly more popular in the last couple of years. And I always say this, LinkedIn allows you to stay top of mind with your audience. It's your CRM.
Yeah.
It allows you to keep track of all your contacts.
Yeah.
It's your prospecting list. And then it's your icebreaker. So people are more willing to go for a coffee than you think when you send someone an email or send them a message on LinkedIn. So if you're in a sphere, connect with as many people as you can.
Yeah.
Go into your current CRM and connect with as many people as you can on LinkedIn. And then if you need to, it's a good place to reach out
For sure.
and have that soft touch point
Yeah.
before getting out. Like, look at
Yeah.
you messaged me on LinkedIn.
That's right.
That was the first place.
Yeah.
It keeps, and I think more people are willing to do that now than before. And
Yeah.
don't be afraid to send out those messages when you can.
Well, and do you remember just how short of a time ago, you would get that request from LinkedIn to connect, and you would just kind of throw it into the delete
Everyone
pile,
would
right?
click. Everyone would click no.
No.
Yeah.
But now it's
The cultural
totally different ballgame.
Yeah, the cultural shift is now to accept those connections and build your network.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it actually, that happened. We noticed that flipped about last year. Middle of last year, we noticed people were starting to connect with more people on LinkedIn. And it correlates to what the influencers were saying when they started to say LinkedIn is the next
Mhm.
platform that people are going to chase because of the organic.
Well, that was what Gary Vee was talking
That's what Gary
about,
would
right?
say. It was late last year that he
Yeah.
started to talk about it,
Yeah.
and it was just before that when we saw that people were starting to connect with more people and engage with it more. So it's big. The other reason is LinkedIn, even though it had its moment of turning more into Facebook and a little more cluttered with content,
Yeah.
they've cleaned it up, and they're getting back to content that provides value to the people that are on LinkedIn. So it's going to keep
Yeah.
getting cleaner.
Yeah.
It had its moment where it went from professional to a little bit like Facebook.
Right.
Now the algorithms cleaned it up and the value's coming back.
Yeah.
And people are seeing that, and they're spending more of their time on LinkedIn in comparison to the other platforms.
For sure. And I'm not sure if you've had the experience to use Sales Navigator on the
I
back.
haven't. No, we don't have the premium.
Very highly recommended. It just allows you to, again, going back to the quote, and I think that was a great way to start the conversation, is you can get a sense using Sales Navigator of what does that fish really like to eat, right? Because you can go and
So now it's almost what brand of worm.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get really in a way personal without it being creepy or anything, but just seeing what's going on at this company, what are changes that could potentially impact them, and do we have anything to provide them that can bring them value, or on a personal level, what's that person care about, and again, doing everything from logos, from being true and ethical, but really seeing, okay, can I bring this person any value down the line? And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, Henry Banman, who started All Weather Windows, or was one of the founding partners, and he was just talking about what's my sales strategy, and my whole approach to it is, I'm going to do my best to uncover what matters to you. I'm going to then see if I have anything to offer you that meets that need. And it might, but you might not be in a position to buy it right now. So I would rather, in that situation, leave off on a good note, make a really good connection with you, share some exchange of value, because chances are that need won't go away. And when you are ready to buy, you'll think of me first. So it's all about that relationship, creating genuine, exchange of
I love
value, and not going after, the number or the sale.
I love it. And that's, when I say top of mind, which is a segment that we were going to have on the show, but we already said it 12 times in this episode. But when I say top of mind, it's about establishing your brand in the top of the mind of your audience, so that when they need your product or service, they know who to call.
Right.
And that's not anything that you can stop, right? So in the car industry, if I'm only going to buy a new car every 7 years, then the dealership or the brands that I engage with have to stay top of mind with me for 7 years.
That's such a great point.
And if they slip up on year 6, even though I've had it the whole time, they slip up on year 6 and someone else gains that top of mind space, then when I'm ready to buy, I'm going probably towards them. There's loyalty, there's all the different factors that come into play.
A lot of them, yeah.
But if you lose top of mind, then you're gone.
Yeah.
And every single business has a certain level of timing to buying products. It doesn't matter if you're selling shoes on Amazon or if you're selling a $200,000 product. they all have timing. So you have to stay top of mind and have your brand there long enough that when the time comes, they're coming straight back to you.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's an interesting one, and I think it is becoming more mainstream for people to realize it.
What do you think about, so one thing that I've heard Gary Vee say, basically he's kind of flipped it. He says everyone is a media company, comma, and then whatever the business that you do. So basically in that he's saying, you got to think of yourself as a media company, have the strategies in place and put that actually first before the others,
I agree with it, and I agree with it because personal branding is taking off because each person is the brand that you're presenting in a lot of cases. In the products you're selling, you're UPS, Capital, but when you're going to meet clients, it's still your brand and the way you interact with them that's important to your clients. So each person is their own brand and their own media company, and you carry that with you throughout your entire career. So I agree with it. It's something that people have to assess. Anyone that's in real estate, anyone that's in the car sales industry, anyone that's selling regularly should still build the brand around themselves in addition to the companies and dealerships providing them with the resources and the content to allow them to succeed.
Yeah.
The average person can't go out and make a ton of videos and content. They can do lives, they can do more basic stuff, but they can't go out and take it to the next level. If the companies they work for provide them with a history and a bank of content that they can use and share, it can just help them succeed more.
And the system and all the tools to really make that happen.
Correct.
And I think, one of the exciting things for these smaller players is that they're able to be a little more agile and nimble and fun. If you're working for a Fortune 50 company, there's lots of levels of bureaucracy that you have to kind of go through for approvals and whatnot. But if you're, your local plumber or, auto body shop or whatever, basically you can do a Truman Show kind of setup, have someone walk around with their smartphone and just videotape and, create some content or, create a following. These are the things that can build that connection before the people even think of, I have that problem that these guys can solve.
One word for all of that: authenticity.
Yeah, for sure.
Simple as that. The reason that the smaller players can do that is because they can connect on an authentic level with their audience.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the bigger companies don't allow that to happen. They put all this red tape in play, and then they come off and their content gets skipped because again, it has sales messages in it. Yeah. It's got all the things that people now are skipping over when they're going through their feeds. It becomes noise. So authenticity wins, and if people can continue to build their brands, be authentic, they're going to take off.
Yeah.
And it's going to be noticeable.
Absolutely.
What else? Tell me something else about yourself interesting.
Well, you know what? So we talked a lot about UPS, and I would feel like I wasn't doing my branch of UPS, right, if I didn't talk a little bit about UPS Capital.
Sure.
These are...
And I didn't hear of Capital before.
Right.
So
yeah. Most people don't. Most companies think of UPS, FedEx, DHL, Purelator, all of them as kind of the same thing, just a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, it's kind of true, except for UPS Capital. So we're the only company of the big kind of 5 players that has a financial branch. And what we are in the business of doing is protecting our customers' bottom line so they can grow their top line. Simple, right? So, why would we be in that business? Why is a freight company getting into financial services? Well, one thing our kind of founders, realized was, well, there's actually much more to a company's business tied to their supply chain than we've given it credit for. And one of the first places that we looked was the risk. So think about, you've got your business. Everyone out here is, has their business, and part of that, one of the first things you do is you get set up with insurance. Well, most companies don't actually have a strategy that they've thought out preemptively to cover the risk that's inherent in their supply chain. So you've got, your product coming in, your resources that you're manufacturing turning into finished goods. What happens if that container of product goes overboard? And now there's $200,000 in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Right? Or on the flip side of that, we have this now finished product. We're shipping it out, and now your truck catches on fire. And now what? Well, you can't come back to the carrier because there's carrier liability. Basically, all the carriers there's. I won't go into it.
Yeah, there's risk elements that come into play that sometimes you can't account for.
Well, and that's right. So there's these areas where we can come in, and I think this is where we bring such differentiated value in the marketplace, where we can come in and have a different conversation. So unlike the other carriers, UPS is really well positioned to kind of come in and talk about, how would a loss affect your cash flow or your profits? What does working, 20 hours back and forth on a claim cost you to your productivity, to your bottom line? And not only what does it cost you, but now we actually have something to offer that will satisfy that and help you grow your top line. Right, and I'm excited. We're attending the Startup Canada Awards on Thursday here in Edmonton,
Nice.
and I'm excited to talk to startup companies to say, hey, I'm sure you've thought about your supply chain, but have you actually thought about the risk in it and what that can do for your bottom line? So that's that kind of 1-2 punch that we have to offer, and from a competitive standpoint, it's really exciting. But more importantly, is can we set up our companies in Canada to do well, so that when the inevitable happens, that they don't have to worry about, will we have to close our doors? Will our customers suffer, right? That's the big deal. That's the exciting part, right?
Makes sense. And I think you're in a good market for it because Alberta, there's so many small businesses that are providing those products and services.
Yeah.
It's a good market. It's a good place. There's a lot of new startups and a lot of innovation happening.
Absolutely.
No, I've enjoyed this conversation, Martin. We didn't know each other before today, so
Not at all.
I think we have a little bit more information now
For
about
sure,
each
man.
other, and this has been fun.
And tell me, what's JV all about? What is your, your fish?
Yeah.
What's your worm?
Build value first. And for me specifically, if I was to look at my worm, I don't know. I think that's there's not too many things that we're looking for now. But if someone provides me with value, I notice it. Right? I now can identify it quickly in comparison to someone who cold calls me and immediately starts to sell. There's a big difference between the two. And now that we identify value, we like applying it to marketing and like taking people through those cycles. It makes things engaging and it helps brands build value, which is what everyone, either personal or large companies, can apply.
Sure.
Take that same concept and apply it across the board. So.
Yeah. And what's kind of the vision? What's the vision for the next 5 years?
Yeah, we want our agency to grow. We want our agency to grow within the Western Canada sphere. I talked earlier about us focusing on our spheres first, rather than thinking international. We're going to say, okay, we're looking at the Edmonton market, then we're looking at the Alberta market, then we're looking at Western Canada, and then extend out and out. So next 5 years, continue to grow, continue to try to develop as much success as we can in a tough economic time.
Yeah.
And then build out from there.
Yeah, that's quite tricky, isn't it? That we have some very unique challenges in this economy.
And everyone's dealing with it though.
Yeah.
So we know that everyone's in the same boat, and we all can help each other by working together to get through it.
Yeah, and leveraging the power of technology and all these new marketing tools. It's so easy to kind of sit back and, woe is me, and it's the economy and whatnot. But there's people out there every day that are hustling, that are trying to figure out new ways to bring value to.
Yeah, and I would say one more thing for us is to stay ahead of the curve. We do a really good job of staying ahead of trends because of doing it every single day. And there's new technologies that are coming out that people aren't aware of yet, and it's one of those things that if we can stay ahead of those trends and continue to understand and learn them, we're able to then position ourselves to continue to succeed, which is really what every business should do.
What's the one piece of technology that most people aren't aware of, but that has you really excited?
The hyper targeting, which a lot of companies are are going after right now. The new technology comes out, allows ads to be more specific, and it just keeps getting better every single year.
Sure.
So it's something that excites us and excites a lot of marketers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know.
So I love it. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah,
This
thank
was a
you, brother.
blast.
Really good.
Thanks for coming out.
Appreciate everything you're doing.
No, and stay on top of the content and keep giving me feedback, because
Absolutely.
we're starting this out and we like the feedback to help us create and correct.
Will do.